Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster podcast. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I interview founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, artists, you name it, all over the world of crypto and blockchain. And today I have another amazing guest. All my guests are amazing. And today I have the co-founder of LUKSO. His name is Fabian Vogelsteller. Fabian, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. So let's kick things off and ask you first, what is your background and is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
A logical background. I mean, in fact, yes and no. My technical background is actually, I have been, a web designer pretty much since I'm a child. So, since 14, I created my first website since I was 14, but I actually studied media design. And in 2013, I heard about, Bitcoin, got into blockchain, and, transitioned from the Web 2 web design to the Web3 world. And it's kind of like the more like the transition into really being coding on Web3 and now being a founder since a few years. And that means I do less coding, I do more orchestration of and architecturing of ideas. In 2015, I was part of the Ethereum Foundation. I was the lead DApp developer, in fact, of Ethereum. And I built back in the day the Mist browser, 2015 and 2016. That was the first Ethereum wallet. It was the first place where you could run DApps. It was the place where, that was how you interacted with smart contract in the early days. It was also the interface that people used for the DAO. The DAO was this big, smart contract that then got hacked and split Ethereum into two. Hence why we have Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. I proposed ERC20 in 2015, which is, the standard behind all tokens. And it kind of coined this term Ethereum request for comment, or ERC, which then kicked off the wave of standardization in blockchain in general. In 2018, started with my co-founder a project called LUKSO, which is basically Ethereum but for normies in simple terms, or the idea of actually evolving the smart contract standards that we use to build things. I mean, if you think about the token standard as a smart contract standard, a building block, tokens, we are missing in fact, another one, and that's identity. And that's your smart contract account. So on LUKSO, which is the project, we have been building these smart contract standards first and launching then a network that functions like Ethereum that launched a year ago, but with those new building blocks in place. And when you have those new building blocks, then you now can do a lot more things. So people can innovate a lot more because they have a smart contract account by default and they have tokens. And that's kind of like that's a little bit, where Ethereum kind of grew into a bit more based on basically on coincidence, because in Ethereum, it was basically people wanted tokens. We came up with some early ideas. Out came ERC20, everybody went with it. The network effect happened. That's the way everybody's running with it. Every other EVM chain is doing it this way. And there has not been the place yet where people rethought these things and thought, okay, how can we make it right? How can we make sure this thing is actually thought out and not just made up, in 5 minutes? And how can we create an ecosystem where we can, foster these new standards and see what comes out of that? So that's kind of the very brief version of my history.
That sounds good. I have some follow-ups from there, that I will ask. I will ask you once I ask you what makes LUKSO a next generation blockchain as opposed to Ethereum.
I mean, on a chain level, it's a twin. That means it's literally Ethereum, the tech. So all the nodes that can run Ethereum can also run the next LUKSO network. So it is on that level, it's the same. The innovation is really on the smart contract standards. The smart contract standards are the agreements that we have. I mean, if you have a programmable blockchain, right? And even if for people who don't know what that even means, so think of like everybody has a computer, and instead of everybody has different computers, imagine everybody's using the same computer with the same memory and the same RAM and the same CPU. So now you can like install little programs on this computer, and because they're on the same computer, they can just talk to each other, obviously, because they're all little on the same computer, right? And they're running kind of in the same environment. So that's what a programmable blockchain is in essence, except there's no admin in the computer. Nobody like controls the computer, but everybody can install these little programs, and once they're installed, they function and they do their thing. A token, for example, is such a little program. It's basically just a program that keeps a balance sheet of like, which address has which amount number and can transfer that amount number back and forth, or just change it to another address. And we need to agree if we are working on the same computer with the same kind of with programs we can arbitrarily build, right? We need to agree on how these programs work in order that somebody can build a wallet that can show all the tokens, or someone else can build a cool other program that is able to interact with tokens or whatever other standards that people proposed. So standardization on a completely generic blockchain, programmable blockchain, is key. And that standardization, as we have seen with Ethereum, is kind of what led to the explosion of everything else. I mean, Ethereum before ERC20 was novel, was interesting. There was a lot of early nerds that tried it out, but it was not exploding by any means. Fun fact, the first explosion came through the ICO wave, which like you told me, like you kind of joined in 2017. So you kind of joined on the peak of that wave, when everybody was, all like hyped up in throwing money left and right to whatever, random token project somebody invented. Because now it was easy, right? Because of ERC20, it was easy that you could just create a token, give it a functionality in your smart contract protocol, and say, here, this is kind of necessary here. And if you want to think that thing is going to be useful, you need the token in the future. So buy it now, kind of, that's the idea. It created also a lot of, problems down the road, and a lot of projects that on the end didn't go anywhere. And also obviously scams as well. But it's the innovation on it's the agreement on the standard that brings brings all these network effects and this growth. And the missing piece so far in blockchain is actually our smart contract account, or the way we interact with blockchain. And the way we interact with blockchain today is purely based on the private key and the public key, and that's not going to change because that's how blockchain understands who you are. But we're using the private key and public key as our address. And if you do that, now the wallet address that you have where your assets are sitting is tied to the private key, which is a password that you cannot change. So now you're tied to the exact same password forever, and you have only one access, which is that one password, and you can maybe copy this into different devices. But the likelihood that you either lose it or someone gets, a device gets lost, or maybe somebody gets access to it, is extremely high. Hence, why using that address as a wallet is not a great idea. You want to abstract it away. You want to actually have your assets and your whole interactions on blockchain sitting on another address that's a program that then can be controlled by multiple of those keys and multiple devices, and you can have access control and remove some of them and add a new one and give different permissions to different of these private keys. When you do this thing, if you abstract this away, and we call that in blockchain account abstraction, if you abstract the account away from the private key, then you can suddenly do things that are, give you a UX, a user experience that grows over time, gets better over time, that can change over time, where the private keys or the methods you use to control your account can improve, or can alter over time. Without that, you need to change the wallet, if you will, right? Quote unquote, the wallet. So on LUKSO, we invented this kind of smart contract account. And fun fact, actually, I proposed that early version of that standard in November 2017. right at the moment when the NFT standard was proposed as well. I proposed the Ethereum account standard. I call it Ethereum proxy account or something like this. That's the kind of foundation for the main accounts that people use on LUKSO. So on LUKSO, it's not just about, hey, let's do the same old like every other EVM chain. Hey, let's just copy ERC20 and use wallets and blah, blah, blah. No, we built the smart contract account. We built the tools to interact with the smart contract account. We improved the token standards. We basically made a clean slate and then improved on what is there and introduced the smart contract account as a core building block that every developer and user should use by default. So now you have Ethereum, but with the right foundation that has been thought out properly. So the USP on LUKSO, if you will, is the smart contract account standards and the network effect you get around those on LUKSO, rather than on an older chain. They have the network effect. They ran with ERC20. Everybody already kind of decided this is what's going to be, and you can't change it anymore because people already, everybody already chose the old. So here we introduce the new on the foundation level, if you will. Yeah.
I like it. I do. I mean, I do something similar now, but I don't have the account abstraction piece. But wallet, one of my, as intermediary, I call them intermediary wallets, where I move things from wallet to wallet to wallet. But at the end of the day, I don't have that at the access point where I could, do the friendly user things. So,
yeah.
You did mention earlier, and I don't. This is an unknown area for me because I came in 2017. The history of the ERC20 creation and the split between Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. That's a gray area for me. Could you walk me through the history of the ERC20 standard and the creation of the split of the Ethereum Classic?
I mean, if you want to have there's actually a lot of books written about this because it's kind of like they call it the biggest heist in crypto. I mean, it's kind of like, it's funnily connected, right? So ERC20 basically was an early proposal. I mean, so Ethereum launched and people realized, okay, we can also make kind of like tokens, or back in the day was called colored coins, on a programmable blockchain. So people thought, okay, let's do this, And Vitalik, the inventor of Ethereum, or the one who came up with the initial idea, he basically wrote this very early version of ERC20 in a wiki page. And we had the discussion, hey, yeah, okay, so he came up with this idea, make a smart contract, and the smart contract holds the account balances, and that's a token. So what I did is I took this and put it into a proper specification, changed a few things, and put it into discussion. In fact, ERC means Ethereum request for comment. And the idea is we get comments in, we get people to discuss, and then eventually we come up with a standard. It happened to be the issue number 20. So that's a pure coincidence. I just clicked an issue, I created the number 20, it turned out to be the number 20, and I called it ERC. That on the end, this standard proposal or this discussion proposal literally became the standard. So people just use this as the reference document for the standard, and then the name became a thing too, and hence why it's called ERC20. There's nothing magic about the number 20 except that GitHub chose it, basically. And what happened is, because of ERC20, because people agreed onto a token standard, now the thing exploded. ICOs happened. Basically people realized, oh, instead of me making a whole blockchain, I can just create this token here. And then people realized, okay, I can raise money for my idea. Lots of people had really good decentralized ideas. Other people just thought, oh, this is a great way now to raise money and not have to do all the building a company, set up, complicated legal structure thing. But then the big problem with that came is that they needed to justify a utility for the token, which in hindsight led to a lot of projects' downfall, because now they basically had to force that utility down the road, making user adoption pretty tough for them. Hence why probably 90% of those projects failed, not because they were bad ideas necessarily, but because they had to force the utility of the token when all they wanted to do is raise money. And if regulators, in my opinion, would have been open enough to say, okay, you can use that token also for equity, probably more of these projects would have succeeded, in fact, just because they could have literally just sold it as equity rather than trying to force a utility. But long story short, what happened is, in fact, one of those projects that wanted to fund a more decentralized idea was Slockit. And Slockit wanted to create these smart locks, where a smart contract can be paid and then opens a lock. And that could be then used for a decentralized Airbnb, right? So instead of having Airbnb, the website and the payment process and everything else, just people install a decentralized or smart lock that then people can pay in crypto and it will open for a period of time if paid, right? And now you have literally decentralized Airbnb. But because they didn't want to just raise money, they thought, okay, like let's create this DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. Let's create a smart contract where everybody can put Ether in, and then they can vote on a proposal of what this money is spent on. And this is really kind of a governance contract, like a voting contract, right? And the idea was the first proposal we will make will be Slockit. And because we created the whole DAO, or like we initiated the smart contract, people probably likely give us money too for the first proposal, let's say. At least it was the hope. What happened is the DAO happened, and he proposed it. The thing became overly popular, and in fact, it collected $150 million in Ether. And at the time, there were 3% of all Ether in that smart contract, which is today an even more significant amount. But back in the day, it was already big because there was nothing ever that raised that much ever in the world. I think it's the biggest crowdfund raise ever at the time. That was then very much topped by the $4 billion of EOS and everything else. But at the time, it was a big deal. And what happened is there was a bug in the code. So there was actually a security mechanism built into the DAO, and that was if there was a proposal made that you disagree with, you could actually split up a child DAO with your votes, or other people could even follow you in that child DAO. And this was a security to prevent that a majority could steal from the minority. Because you could get the biggest voters together and say, guys, let's just move all this money to us, and fuck all the rest in there, so that this cannot happen before the proposal would be executed. You can literally go into this child DAO and split up. That was a security mechanism, but that security mechanism also had a flaw, which is that there was a code, and exactly a line of code, which is kind of crazy. When you removed all the comments, it was the line 666. Which is kind of freaky. And a fun fact, the person who wrote it, Christoph Jentsch, is a Mormon. I don't know if there's a subconscious, play it here, whatever happened, I don't know. But what happened is basically he switched, or two lines should have been reversed. So that allowed an attacker to kind of withdraw to a child DAO, but use the same tokens without they were destroyed at this time. He could do it multiple times. You could draw more into his child DAO than he was supposed to, just because of two lines being swapped. Anyway, what happened is a person figured this out, used it, and withdrew pretty much, I think, 1/3 or 2/3 of all that Ether into his own child DAO, stealing it this way. So that was a big deal. And because there was such a big deal, and now 3% of all Ethers at stake, or let's say 2% of all Ether, whatever, at stake, everybody panicking. There was the proposal in the community to say, okay, we can split Ethereum, we can basically make a fork where all the Ether that are on the code that look like a DAO go into a refund contract and everybody gets their money back. Or we keep everything as is, the guy steals the money, and we have to live with the fact that 2% of all Ethers are gone and probably being dropped in the market, and everybody panics and everybody cries and everything dies. That kind of, the idea of a fork, of such a fork in the past was, okay, the majority will choose one side, and then the minority who are on the rest of the chain will follow the majority because otherwise their chain is valueless, right? That was the idea. So the DAO, or this fork, in fact, showed otherwise, because it showed that there was a strong core of the community who believed really in the idea of code is law and it shouldn't be changed. And they didn't want it to fork, while the majority chose to fork. So the version of Ethereum that you see today is the one actually who forked and refunded the DAO. That is the main Ethereum. And Ethereum Classic is the one where the attacker got the money. And those continue to exist in parallel. One would have thought, okay, Ethereum Classic at some point, just disappears because it's not that much difference or innovation, but it still exists today. It has its niche community still around. So chains can split, and they can split for a long time and still be a thing. And that's what happened with the DAO, basically kind of creating that effect on Ethereum.
Wow. And that was many years ago. So
2006.
Yeah. So standards, like, people overlook the importance of standards, from what you said, they are very, very important. So what is the overall importance of standards, and how can excellent standards or winning standards lead to global mass adoption of blockchain technology?
I mean, on the end, the standards is what really allow different parties or different protocols or apps to interact together. I mean, it's very different to the old world. In the old world, we have isolated systems, right? Everybody has the server infrastructure. They maybe at best have an API, but if you use the API of another company, you are always at their mercy, because they could change it, they could stop it, they can literally kick you out. So you're literally at their mercy. You need to have great business agreements and really hope that they are there forever. When you have standards and you have smart contracts that are just deployed and running in a certain way, if your smart contract depends on the standard or the API of another smart contract, that thing will be there forever and it's not going to change. So that risk is gone, right? So now you can build systems that literally incorporate other people's stuff without fearing that it goes away or stops working halfway in the future. That changes what you can build. So now you can build actually collaborative systems where your wallet can talk to the token, and the token can talk to that DeFi protocol, and the DeFi protocol can talk to a lending protocol, and this all kind of works in concert, and it's all built by different people, but still it can work together flawlessly because it's all based on either standards and these smart contracts that are unchangeable. I mean, or could be unchangeable. Mostly they're unchangeable. So, and how does it make things user-friendly? I mean, here we come to the smart contract account, right? A smart contract account, when you abstract away from the private key, you can now build a user experience that can be looking like Web 2, but it could be even better than Web 2. Because now even your phone, which has private keys, for example, in them, passkey, your Face ID, all of these are actually generated keys that do signing and do encryptions and stuff like this. So you can have devices having their keys controlling your profile. And that profile or that wallet, that smart contract account is not just like an internet account, but it's also a wallet at the same time. So it can hold things. It can hold assets, it can interact with tokens, it can interact with anything on that blockchain. And that makes it a little bit more than just a profile. It makes it also more than a wallet. It makes it literally a decentralized internet account. There is a downside, though, on having a smart contract account or a smart contract profile, if you will. On the end, it is an account or it's a profile that sits on a blockchain. So that means whatever interactions you do, when you do transactions, they are visible to everyone. Same like today, if you're doing something on Bitcoin or Ethereum, your address is visible to everyone. They might not know who's behind it. And I don't need to write on my profile, it's me, Fabian. I mean, I can do that, but I can also have 3 profiles and have 2 that are anonymous and one that's kind of more public, and then have to be a bit more picky on what I do on which, right? In the ideal scenario of the future, we have blockchains that are fully verifiable and fully encrypted. We do not have that right now. We have kind of like some that are encrypted in some way using zero knowledge proofs, and others that are fully transparent, which is most of them. And there's right now not a mix between the two in a perfect way. So this is more a future scenario where you can have that more fully privacy focused but verifiable account in the future. But right now, where we are is at the public blockchain profile that doesn't necessarily need to point to you as a person, but at least points to some address doing things. But it makes everything inherently more social too, right? That's why a wallet and a profile, if you mix it together, now you make blockchain social, right? And now you make these decentralized transactions social. And that's what LUKSO is all about, basically.
I want to get into the social. The first thing I want to do, though, is I wanted to find, new creative economies. You guys mentioned that, you help new creative economies. What are those creative economies, and how do you help them grow?
I mean, on the end, the way we phrase it is blockchain for social culture and creators. And we actually wrote a white paper 2019 called the blueprint for the new creative economies. And on the end, what are the creative economy? It's a very broad term, because what creators? What's the creative economy? It's in fact anyone. You're a creator with your podcast, but a YouTuber is a creator as well. An influencer on Instagram is a creator as well. If somebody makes a fashion brand, or even just like it's a designer collective. I mean, nowadays we have obviously NFTs and so on. So basically, whenever you create value or anything in the internet and in a global society, that is the creative economy, which pretty much entails every content producer in some sort in the world, which probably is everybody in the internet in some version or not, if they make money or not. So with the creative economy, we really see obviously the creators that we have today, like musicians and artists and brands and so on. But it's also the content creator, and it's the influencer, and it's the TikToker of today as well. So it's when we use blockchain with them, that is the creative economy, right? That's the economy between people, which also is an inherently social economy, right? Because if you have artists, you have followers, you have fans. If you have a brand, you have followers and friends. But even if you have just people interacting with themselves using a DAO structure or some kind of governance or voting, that is also social, and that's also the creative economy. So it's a very broad term, and it's a novel term. But yeah, that's how LUKSO started out, by identifying more the creator economy as the future where blockchain lies. And because we have this account, the smart contract account, everything is social, hence why social culture and creators.
So I'm looking at social media, for example. You have Twitter, you have Telegram, you have LinkedIn, you have a whole bunch of stuff that's Web 2, that's centralized, really. People are looking for the adoption and the evolution of decentralized social media to be Web 3, to be fully decentralized. What technological advancements do you feel are necessary for that to happen?
I mean, so this is exactly where is it? What are these platforms? I mean, these platforms obviously, create databases where people can post, and connect and all of these things. But essentially, it is always a new user account, right? It's a new account system. That is not your account, by the way. It is your access, your email and password is your permission to access their platform, right? And if they wish so, they just could delete your account at any point in time. It's not yours at all, right? They could just prevent you from accessing it. They could literally alter the content at will. It's a complete isolated, it's like a company, it's a centralized system. When we are building a decentralized account, when we have a smart contract account, we call it universal profiles. When you have a universal profile on LUKSO, that profile, that wallet, that account is yours 100%. If you don't give access to anyone else, no one has access. The blockchain doesn't have an admin, so nobody can control your account but you. And so now you could think of building a LinkedIn that uses this account at the foundation. You could build, an X or a Facebook or an Instagram that uses the decentralized account at the foundation. So now you're creating a whole different system. You're creating a system where the user truly owns the account. And ideally, you don't want to just have a database with posts. You want to probably think of some cool decentralized version of a post feed system where people can just post things in some more decentralized version of it. And yeah, and when you do that, you have the decentralized version of social media, or yeah. But you need the right foundation. That's what I'm trying to get to. It needs to be based on that decentralized account. That's step one. That's the building block number one in that. And if this doesn't exist, you just create a clone of the same old, and call it then decentralized in some form, right? Or it's clunky to use anyway. So that's where we are starting on the network and the foundational standards, so that people can build that kind of future.
And in order to have the foundation and have it built properly, the most important thing underlying it is the standards for that foundation.
Exactly. That's where, that's the innovation on LUKSO. It is on the standards level, and not only defining these standards, but building out the tooling, right? We built, for example, a browser extension that's kind of like MetaMask, just for universal profiles. We build out developer tools that can easily interact with this. We're building a mobile app. Anybody could build a mobile app. Anybody could build such a browser extension because it's standardized. But we obviously built the first version of it, and we built and showcase what can be done, how it can look like, what a website could look like, how you can integrate it, writing documentation. It's all about literally education and building the first building blocks for others to make it easier and build cooler stuff. But it's about the foundations. Exactly. Yeah.
So now I have to ask, I mean, you said you're building a foundational comparison of, for identity, like MetaMask, right? Here's my concern with MetaMask. Every time I've used it, I've lost money. Okay. I don't use MetaMask. I use Crystal and other things. I know I'm more comfortable with that. But what are your comparative standard improvements to MetaMask? What are those areas on, and how? And what are you doing that's better?
I mean, MetaMask is not really the best example, because MetaMask has been around since many years. In fact, MetaMask was born out of it was kind of like an improvement or a competition to the Mist browser. Back in the day when we built the first Ethereum wallet, you had to run a full node because we wanted to make it a full decentralized way. And then MetaMask was like the idea of, okay, let's just do the same like the Mist browser, just in the browser, and we don't run a full node, we use some external node. And that's where MetaMask came from. Sadly, their UI hasn't really improved in ages. It's surprisingly bad. And because of this bad UI, people do lose money, right? They go to a scam page, it says, authorize this website or authorize this token. People think nothing bad, and hops, the wallet is gone. So it's the UI that's bad, but it's also inherently the problem of these wallets that are purely based on a private key. If you make the private key the first-class citizen, then you cannot have permissions. You cannot change the private key and still keep the same address. You can literally do nothing besides having your account and move your money around. What we are having is this smart contract account. That means now the wallet, if you will, which we call a profile, that you have in this browser extension is your smart contract address. The private key that controls it, there are many of them. Your browser extension has one, your mobile app will have another one, maybe your 3 other devices have completely different private keys, but they all control the same smart contract account. And because it's a smart contract account, it's a little program, we can now even have a key manager with permissions. So you can say, okay, my mobile phone, for example, can execute, but it can never change other keys. So it can never, add a new key or change the permission of an existing key. So you can just like move my money around. I could even authorize an app and say, okay, this app can use my profile, but it can only talk to this one other smart contract, which I know they need to talk to, but I can never talk to any of my tokens or do any other thing. So I can make them use my profile, but I restrict it, which is, for example, really interesting when you want to go into a game, right? In a game, you want to ideally not have another wallet in the game with another place to manage stuff and then later to move it out or whatever. You want to be the same profile again in the game. You want to come with your stuff and you want to leave with your stuff. So now you can give access from that to this game, right? You can basically say, here, game, generate a key. I authorize it in my profile, give it some restrictions, and then I can be me there as well. So that changes everything because now you can have a fluid way how you move between different apps or games or devices, whatnot, while being and maintaining the same address on chain. Obviously, that's not great for privacy reason, but it's specifically useful for publicity, you know, for collectors, for ease of use, and for like, if you're a gamer, for example, you want to be recognized. Yeah, you want to take your stuff around. You do want to be the same person everywhere. It's not about privacy, it's about publicity. This is literally why you do it. That's how you gain reputation, right? So it's that use case, really, like that kind of more, you know, social use case again. And there's a lot more technical details of why the smart contract account is useful and what else it can do. It's not just you know, the permission system, but it completely allows to abstract away. And you can create any kind of user experience now, including social recovery or any kind of recovery idea you could have. You could build it on top of this. So you could have a time lock where if you don't have access or when there's no transaction happening for over 3 months, then that other wallet that you have somewhere safe will gain access to the thing instantly. Or you could come up with some cool ideas, you know, or have a third party have only access to recover your profile, but not move your money, and God knows what you want to invent. So it's very flexible, very versatile. Hence why it's a standard, right? A standard needs to be open enough, flexible enough to not just function for one thing, but functions for anything ideally. But it also needs to be a standard, so it needs to be defining something. It cannot just be, you know, the total generic system, because that then you're based back to no standard and no definition, right? No, then you are the generic smart contract. So this balance, you know, that's kind of like the tricky part, and we found that balance, I believe, and that's what makes universal profiles and LUKSO so unique. It's the first of its kind blockchain that takes this approach. Every other blockchain just took the approach of a different name and better consensus, and mostly that turned out to be more centralized than decentralized, and then a different name, and then saying the better chain for DeFi, or the better chain for NFTs, or the better chain for whatever, which mostly just meant that the exact same, just a different color and a different name. That even rhymes. But yeah.
I like it. It is a fine balance between saying whatever goes and saying, you know, we're flexible, we're going to bend, but this is the you know, mandate. It's a tight, like a tightrope. So yeah, I'm excited to see how everything plays out in the future. So I want to thank you very much for joining me today. I enjoyed. Thank you for the history lesson, and thank you for explaining to me what you guys do at LUKSO. I really appreciate it. I have one last question, and it's how people find out more information about you, about LUKSO. When can they start to use your standards protocol? How can they do that?
Yeah, I mean, so the LUKSO network actually is live since a year. But the universal profile standard and browser extension, the main way to interact with it, is live since about a few months, and very busy, or like active is the chain since around 5 months. So you can go to, actually the best place to start is you go to universalprofile.cloud. That's where you can see the profiles of other people. That's where you could see the profiles of other people. And that's where you can create your own profile as well. You can install a browser extension. You can, you know, yeah, go interact with LUKSO right away. And we are basically, initially, we're subsidizing the gas so that deploying the contract and even interacting with LUKSO doesn't require you to have LUKS and go to an exchange and do all the hustle. You just literally need to create a browser extension and go do something. You know, there's a marketplace, an NFT marketplace. There's Common Ground, there's a chat application where there's all the communities right now. People are creating a lot of meme coins. So right now it's NFTs and meme coins. That's what people do. And if you're a builder, you can literally now build anything social on blockchain, and it's the right foundation for that. So as a builder, that's the place you want to go. As a user, Universal Profile Cloud, go figure it out, create a profile, see what other people do and collect. And yeah, like that's we all go from there, I would say.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much. Yeah.